In the valley, we know death. We feel the possibility of its creeping finality. Last week, Christine began our Lenten series, Living the Paschal Mystery, with the first movement, Death, and pointing us to Ash Wednesday's stark reminder, remember you are dust, and to dust you shall return. Death, Rolheiser says, can be terminal, highlighted by an unchangeable end, one void of hope, or it can be paschal, enriched by surrender, a letting go that makes room for a deeper life in God. We talked about death, the releasing of dreams, and the often painful shifts that are required. And we ended with this, an embodied movement that culminated in our hands, palms open, one on top of the other, having moved through the pain of stripping, understanding the requirement to give, to release, and to let the thing, whatever it may be changed. But what is it that we have now? Remember those hands, those open palms. Is the dream, the thing, breathing now? Is it alive again? Same circumstances, all things remaining equal? Has it simply been revived? Well, Rolheiser says no. What we have, if we've done any of this right, is truly new. Today's subject is resurrection. Rolheiser uses Lazarus as an example. Having been thus summoned from the tomb, Lazarus returned to his community as he had been. Same family, same village, same struggles, same life. His life was returned, but not transformed. He would die again. But a truly resurrected life, God's response to death, is a life renewed by the Spirit. And that Spirit is specific to the needs of the individual, and I'll add the community around them at that time. And so our Old Testament reading takes us to the Valley of Dry Bones, a story belonging to a people in exile, displaced, their hopes dried up, their national identity in ruins. And God asked them the same question God asks of us. With Ezekiel, we are asked to walk among them, walk among these bones, back and forth, noticing their age, their brittleness. The bones are dry. In this, we know this particular death is not new. Time, months, more likely years, maybe even decades have passed. But this is Ezekiel's moment, and he hears the question, can these bones live? Can you let me do something else with this seemingly dead situation? To which Ezekiel replies, you alone know. You know how attached I've been to this thing, the way I imagined it would be, what it's meant to me. You know my heartbreak. You've known my suffering. You've seen every tear. Can these bones live? Lord, you know. Only you know. In answering this question, Ezekiel surrenders his ache, his unknowing and brokenness to God, because only God can know at this point. He is uncertain. The ground has been shifted away under his feet. He's at rock bottom. Well, then and only then can this thing be truly transformed. Can it live? When the dream is released, the bones are given new muscles and skin, and it is these newly restored bodies that are given a new spirit. And this is key. Something's happening, but whatever it isn't a life in the Paschal sense until the Spirit shows up. The scaffolding may be the same, but this is surely a new project. According to Rolheiser, this reanimation is fueled by a new and renewed spirit. The resurrected life is radically new. And it is clear that we play a part in that transformation. From death to new life, we receive it only as we are able to receive the new thing, even and especially when it arrives in a form that we did not choose. Going through, writer Cleo Wade shares, is how we get to the other side. And there is another side. In the valley, we are confronted with resurrection, the promise of God's response to it as life. Name yours, because we aren't short on valley experiences these days, right? You don't need me to name them. Know only that God's response to it is life, new life in some form. God speaks into seemingly terminal situations and shifts the narrative. But we have a part to play in this work. We're called to affirm our yes to the dream of new life, a life that emerges after death, and we have a part to play in our resurrection. God gives to the prophet power that only God can give. Prophesy to the winds, to the breath, prophesy to yourself. Our words, our naming, our prophetic speech participates in resurrection. Resurrection requires it. This is where the text surprises us, because we are not only speaking to God, we're also speaking to ourselves, to the dead thing, to the dried up dream, prophesy to the bones, prophesy to the breath. We are commanded to do this, to prophesy, to speak into and to the dead thing, and to send it forth, to bless and be blessed by its transformation. But this shift in the valley, from bones to bodies, emerges from God's conversation with the prophet, the one who perceives it. This is the dream of the resurrection of many, attributed to the voice of one who is listening, discerning, and then speaking. This is a central theme in Rolheiser's Paschal demand. Resurrection and its accompanying transformation requires perception. But perception requires that we've opened these hands, right? That we've been open to the work and lessons of the valley. And this takes us from the communal to that intimate space, from the myriad and old, dry bones all over and everywhere, to a woman's name. Are you hearing in your own life? Do you perceive? God is speaking. And the image of a soul woman at a tomb in a garden speaks of God's personal invitation to all of us. At some point, we must all enter the garden alone, while it is still dark, to find in our tearful vigil faith to see the inconceivable, to see and then remember our way into this mystery, to believe and then give voice to that conviction, to say that I have seen the Lord, I have seen the Savior, I've been touched, and sharing that good news that Jesus is alive, that yes, there is new life. Well, John shares with us this other truth, that there is another kind of life. John calls this life eternal. Not life resumed, but life transformed. But this work is not easy. In John's gospel, we watch Mary Magdalene struggle. Her long hoped for Messiah is dead. She doesn't see him. The stone had been removed. She cannot yet perceive the new thing. She's stuck in the past and clinging to what was. And then she hears her name. Mary, in this moment, in her particular body, in her particular grief, well, womanist Catholic theologian M. Sean Copeland says this itself is a kind of resurrection. She is met in the specificity of her situation and can hear and understand. She can perceive. We know Mary will cling, and that as the Paschal demand is made, she will need to release her grasp to make room for new life. And this is resurrection's only requirement. So hear it as resurrection's gracious invitation. Mary, hear it as your own name. Resurrection is God's work, but God will not do it without us. Resurrection is God's work, but God will not do it without us. New life in God's intention. New life is God's intention. I believe this without reservation, but it's important to note that resurrection is not a vending machine. We don't kind of insert our obedience and get back from the vending machine our preferred outcome. Because some of us have sat with people we loved as they died, and they died fully and completely, a death that did not turn around. And we are right to ask, where is the new life in that? Here is what I hold, and I hold it with faith and a fair measure of trembling. The Paschal Mystery does not exempt us from terminal death. The Paschal Mystery moves us through it. Rolheiser is careful to say that resurrection is not the elimination of death, but the promise that death will not have the final word. Sometimes new life emerges in the community that mourns. Sometimes it comes years later in a form we could not name at the time. Sometimes it lives in what was planted in the one who died. And your resurrection may not look like mine or anyone else's. I cannot tell you what form it will take in your valley. I can only tell you that new life in some form is the character of God, not as a consolation prize, but as what God cannot help but do in the presence of death. And so I know this valley, and I've heard my own name. I heard it in the wilderness of infertility, a season marked by deep pain and loss. And I've shared it here with you. But Rodney and I desperately wanted a family that included children, because there's all kinds of families, but we wanted one that included children. A little more than a year into our marriage, we felt ready, but an initial and very late loss led to another, and then a long season of silence. And in those years, the dream seemed to die. Cast as we were into the valley, we watched those many bones grow dry. It took a long time before we could see that moving toward adoption wasn't the terminal death of our dreams. Moving toward adoption was our Paschal hope. The dream of parenthood reimagined, transformed as the dream of children through adoption. At that time, to be honest, my deepest fear was giving up on God. I wondered if it was my faith that was lacking. At the time, we served in a church or worshiped in a church that really held to that you have to have enough faith. You can't stop believing. There's never a time when you give up. You hold on forever. And I held on to that teaching and believed that it was my faith. If I move towards adoption, then that means I'm giving up on God, and that means I'm not doing this faith thing right. Did moving forward toward adoption mean I had no faith? Was I not waiting on God long enough? Well, in that valley, we heard our names and began to prophesy to the breath of our situation, and new skin and ligaments and tendons grew around the bones of our dream for parenthood. And one day it was abundantly clear we would become parents through adoption. And it didn't feel like second best or resignation or the result of my weak faith. It felt like our blessing and God's plan for our life. But there was work to be done to get there. Prophesying to the breath meant calling an adoption agency and writing birth parent letters, meeting other adoptive parents and educating ourselves, preparing our hearts and home for the children we would parent. Resurrection couldn't happen without our participation. Ezekiel reminds us of it as he prophesies to the breath, and Mary Magdalene makes it clear when she responds to the command. She loosens that grip. She lets go. She responds to her commission to go and tell. The dream of biological parenthood was real for us. It was tender and it was very natural. But God had something else for us, a new thing planned. And we could have missed it if we had held too fast to our original plan. I'll say it a million times, I cannot imagine not having been loved by Lisha, Chyla, and Ela. Who would we have been without loving and learning from them? Who would we have been had we not been shaped by their love? Would we have even made it to the surprise of a day? I really doubt it. I really wonder. Our dream of parenthood did not die a terminal death. It was transformed. Resurrection as the dream for children through adoption, and I am so glad of it. I'm grateful also for the faces that I see in this sanctuary today, or at least one of them I saw, who witnessed so much of the journey with us. Maureen, wherever she is in here, I saw her early. There she is. Maureen was there. When I arrived here in 2019, to see her in the pews was one of the shocks of my life. But she was there, and she was likely there for all those painful losses. She was there when she saw my cries at the altar every Sunday. And so was another member here, Bemi. I don't see her here today, but she was there to witness me as a new mother, finding my way in the motherhood, as they say, amongst all those beautiful mamas in Brooklyn. We called ourselves the Mocha Moms. It was a time, it was a thing. God's response to death is life. I know this not only from Ezekiel, not only from Mary, I know it from my own valley, where I learned that resurrection isn't just the scraps of some old story we tell about Jesus, some ancient history. No, resurrection is happening now. It happened to me. It is happening always. It is happening to you, if we can perceive it. Ezekiel's is the dream of the resurrection of many, attributed to that single voice, the voice of one. Is that voice yours? Julia Esquivel was a Guatemalan poet and theologian who wrote from the middle of tremendous suffering and loss, and this is what she has to say about resurrection. She says, "They threatened us with the resurrection because they do not know life. Poor things. They threatened us with death because they do not know the deeper magic of life. That bones respond to breath, that words can summon the release of blessings, spark powerful movements, that the posture we take after death has the potential to create something new. They didn't know the layers, the depth of ancient and fundamental laws written into the nature of all life. Laws which hold a power beyond our imagining." And we know that costs. We know that there is a cost. There is a role for us to play in this new birth. The hand of God has brought us here, and we must rise to it. The hand of God has brought us here. We must rise to it. God's response to death is life, life-specific, embodied, and spirit-led, spirit-breathed. This is not wishful thinking. This is the character of God declared in Ezekiel. It is sung in the psalm and embodied in the garden, and it is with us today. So go, prophesy, tell someone, spread and live this truth. Rise to it.